Looking to connect to other Overwatch players just like you? Be in the know with the latest news around the game and the league? You're in the right place. Welcome to Overwatch Recall, connecting you with Overwatch podcasts. With your host, Glen Totemlydrunk Smiddy.
Welcome back to Overwatch Recall. I am your host, Glen, Totemlydrunk Smiddy, and today I am joined by Sharp Dressed Gaming, and tonight is going to be a little bit different in regards to the overall theme of this interview, because you have a very unique YouTube channel that focuses on two of my absolute favorite things right now. The first being Pokemon. Which is, it's hot right now. There's so much going on between Pokemon Go and Pokemon Let's Go on the Nintendo Switch. And obviously, the trading card side of the game. Obviously, we got, Detective Pikachu. That's been a pretty big meme in some cases on social media. And of course, you've also ventured into Overwatch content, which we will jump into. But why don't we start by learning a little bit more about you as a creator, Sharp Dress Gaming, in regards to, one, your gaming background, in regards to Overwatch, and whether or not that is your first foray into Blizzard gaming.
Well, as far as gaming went in my past, as far as Blizzard games in general, the only other Blizzard game I touched was I played World of Warcraft once. I played like one session of it. I'm like, nah, that's not for me. And I never really had PC games in general, and I always thought of Blizzard as that kind of gaming content was all on PC. So mostly I just played console games. And then this year I just in March, so.
Fantastic. So with that being said, I know, you've, been playing, both on, I think it's PS4 in your case, and PC as well. So, have you noticed, anything, kind of differential between the two? Because I've only dabbled on PS4. That's not, my go-to in regards to gaming. I'm not, a huge, console fan outside of, when I play Nintendo Switch. The whole controller thing is just, it's weird to me, especially after not playing an FPS game on any sort of controller since Halo 2. so that'll put that into perspective on how long it's been in my case. But how has your Overwatch experience been, just a different game media types?
Yeah, and in regards to controls, the controller, that's how I felt, but the opposite way, because I started on the PC version of it. And the first time I booted it up, I'm like, well, controller goes right in there. I'm not even going to touch the keyboard and mouse because I've never done that before. So I played on controller for the majority of the beginning of my Overwatch time. And you can just tell that you're at such a deficit compared to everybody else, because you don't turn as fast, you don't react as fast as a keyboard and mouse does. So it's a lot harder to go up against those other players. So eventually I started teaching myself keyboard and mouse. I'd start each session by going into the practice range and just trying stuff there. And then eventually I figured it out. But as far as the PS4 went, the only reason I got it for that was because at the time, my PC could not stream Overwatch. It was too crappy. So I was waiting for my new one to come in. I'm like, well, I might as well get on PS4 and start getting people used to the idea that I'm starting to do Overwatch content. So that's really the only reason I got into PS4 Overwatch at all. So I don't play it as much as the PC version, but I like to do placements at least every once in a while on there.
Yeah, for me, that is still a work in progress, as my PS4 account is still not at 25, so I have not unlocked competitive play. And, that's definitely something that, we'll talk a little bit about later, because I'm curious between not only just the overall feel difference between the game, but also how you have done as a player on competitive. Mm-hmm. Because for me, I would only do placements just out of the sheer curiosity to see whether or not my skill rating would be in the same ballpark on PS4 as it would be when I'm playing on PC. But before we can, talk about, all of that good stuff, let's talk a little bit about the content you do. So as I mentioned, your channel is unique because I really don't see anyone covering these two things together. So on the Pokemon side of things, a lot of your focus has been on the trading card game, more so like with the it's the competitive scene, like the VGC, things like that. So what's your history with Pokemon, specifically when it comes to like the trading card game? Have you been someone that has just been playing the game for quite some time, or are you just really involved with the competitive aspect of it?
Well, interestingly, the trading card game is probably the reason I started getting into any kind of competitive, even video game stuff. Because growing up, I really only played games by myself. There wasn't really anybody else around to hone skills against to even make it worth the time to practice games. So I just played. But then when I was in college, I happened to wander into a local trading card game store, and they had Pokemon trading card games. And I'm like, well, I have these cards. I might as well use them. So the next week I brought just random cards in and started learning the game. And I really, really got into that. And I'd like go to tournaments, regional tournaments, and that kind of stuff with it. And around the same time, I started my YouTube channel, and I was kind of doing video games more, just like Let's Plays of the Pokemon games, just for fun, because I didn't really know that competitive scene. And I mixed in the trading card game stuff. I do openings because people love those. And I started building decks with the trading card game online application. And not a lot of people did that at the time as well. So that kind of built traction for the channel. And eventually I just started getting tired with the trading card game. There's a lot of money to be putting into that because they keep rotating cards out. So you got to buy new cards, and those cards are expensive. And eventually got to a point where there was just one card. It was Seismitoad EX, would just destroy everything. You just couldn't do anything against it because one of its attacks, it didn't do a lot of damage, but it made it so you couldn't play item cards, and that just ruined the game for me because everybody would use that card. I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to play this anymore. And at that same time, I started learning the video game competitive scene side of it because it was with Pokemon X and Y. I don't know if you played those at all when they came out, but they made making competitive Pokemon a lot easier to do. So I was able to learn that, and then I just went full force into that, doing that at regionals and that kind of stuff. So switched from trading cards over to the competitive side of the video game for Pokemon.
Yeah, it still like really surprises me how popular that IP still is after all of these years. Mm-hmm. It's really gone to the point where people that were fan of Pokemon when it first came out are now sharing that experience with like their kids. Like that's just it's crazy to think about because that hasn't really translated like to say like Yu-Gi-Oh. I think Magic would kind of be an exception just because Magic still is going strong and like they have their I'm trying to remember what's currently in beta, but I know Magic has their like their TCGO version of their game that has been doing pretty well. But Pokemon also came out with like their online version, which you could just download to play on your PC. Did you venture into like the Pokemon TCGO market at all, or were you sticking more to physical cards when you were playing?
Well, I did both just because every time you buy physical cards, you get a code to get the online cards. So they were pretty easy to get, and it made it really easy for content creating. Because you could just lay out the deck in front of people and be like, hey, this is how you build this. Now we're going to go test it. And you don't need like the big camera rigs or anything like that. It's just all on your PC. So that was really nice for that. So yeah, I did a few of those for a while.
Awesome. Well, moving on, you have branched out more and you've started to cover different Overwatch content, and you've done a couple of different things. I know you've done like some tips and tricks in regards to holiday events. Your most recent one had to do with the delete brig movement that has been really hot right now. And some of that does spawn from the State of Overwatch video that Siegel had released. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I kind of watched it, not necessarily though, just because it's all stuff you've heard from everybody else.
It's a lot of complaining from a lot of people and a lot of different competitive tiers, and really it's just the fact that especially if you're a main tank player in Overwatch, you feel like nothing within the game is in your control. With the amount of crowd control abilities, but you also like do some stuff with your placements in different seasons. You focus on like new hero releases and focus a little bit more on the gameplay. So right now, like, what are you planning on doing in regards to some upcoming releases? Because we are like right around the corner from the return of Winter Wonderland, which I'm sure is going to bring back the Maze Snowball Offensive, which is a hard pass for me. I'm not a huge fan of that one. Just from a game design perspective. But what do you have lined up for the near future here on your channel?
Well, just exploring more of the heroes. Especially, I just got another account to do DPS because on my main account, I am a Brigitte main, and then I play tank mostly, and healers. So I want to do DPS because I'm a terrible shot. So I don't want to subject my team to that on the level I'm at right now. So I started going to those lower levels to test that stuff out so I can get videos for that. But yeah, mostly just montage stuff for now. I'm still trying to get all of the competitive stuff under my belt so I can actually teach people, because that's what I like to do with videos, is to teach people about this stuff, like with that Junkenstein's Revenge video I made. But for the most part, it's just to entertain. So basically, I just stream for as long as I can. Sometimes I'll record stuff while I'm not streaming, because that's where a lot of the funnier stuff happens, because I'm just messing around, not really paying attention. And then I'll make montages of it. And essentially, I just lay out hours of footage and I just watch through it. And if anything makes me laugh or I think it's cool enough, I'll clip it out, throw it to the beginning and keep going, and then edit it all at the end there. Yeah, mostly just more of that, and hopefully getting more of the competitive scene going here. And as far as the holiday events go, I also hate the May Snowball events and the Yeti Hunt. They're terrible, and I hate May as a character in general. Well, her character's fine. It's her gameplay I hate, but yeah, I'll do that just for the free loot boxes, because Yeti Hunt is so easy to get loot boxes from. But yeah, mostly just more montage, more competitive educational stuff.
That's fantastic. And with the return of I even forgot about the Yeti one. Like that just shows you how much I block that event out of my mind, just because I know we're not gonna get a new sort of arcade game out of this, because a lot of times they're just focusing on the core elements of the game, and just focusing more on the cosmetic side of these events. And who knows whether that philosophy is going to change with Team 4, but earlier today, like we had Vancouver's Overwatch League team do their reveal, which also happens to be kind of Yeti based, which I thought was very fitting, considering that Winter Wonderland is right around the corner, and that was really like the first thing that came to my mind. But we have to talk about Overwatch and Pokemon. As one in this case. So, when you initially reached out, I told you immediately, okay, here's the plan. When I have you on, we are 100% going to be talking about this. We are going to talk about the different Overwatch heroes and who are effectively their Pokemon counterparts. Like, who the first Pokemon is that you feel like this hero translate well to, or could understand. So I'm just gonna throw out some random heroes, and you mentioned you mostly play support and tanks, so we'll probably primarily focus on that. And then I want to hear who the first Pokemon is that comes to your mind, and maybe a reason behind why there's that sort of translation between the two, or correlation. So this should be interesting, because there could be some quality meme content when it comes to this. So let's first start off with your main. When you think of Brigitte, who right now is at the forefront of the hashtag Delete Brig movement, who everyone is crying foul over and want to see basically just removed from the game, which is not happening. Like
Thank God. I would quit if she left. The only reason I bought the game is because of her.
Like they're making some changes, which on the P tier, which are like buffing her healing and kind of like taking away her like stun damage combination essentially, which in the current meta is actually only going to strengthen the triple tank, triple support meta, which I don't think a lot of people are realizing. So you're basically just making this tank-heavy composition have more healing, ergo, you're giving him more survivability. So there's not going to be any change in the meta, guys. I'm sorry, but when you think of Brigitte, who would be her Pokemon equivalent?
So I actually made a video on this doing Overwatch because and how she's going to be able to change the meta so drastically, which she did, and now it's going to be hard to change away from her. But in the Pokemon VGC community, the video game side of it, there's a Pokemon that's running everything that kind of does the same thing that she does, called Incineroar. He's one of the newer starter Pokemon. So essentially what he does is he'll come in, he has an ability called Intimidate, which decreases attack stat, essentially making survivability for his team longer because their attacks aren't doing as much. He has an attack called Fake Out, which flinches the opponent, kind of like stunning. And then he just runs the entire meta currently. If you don't have Incineroar on your team, you're running at a deficit, essentially. So they just go hand in hand at this point.
That is perfect, because right now, from an Overwatch perspective, some games will come down to whether or not your team is fielding a Brigitte.
Mm-hmm.
If your team is running a Brigitte and you're up against a team that does not have a Brigitte, one, you already have the advantage because, you know, your team is going to have more survivability just due to the extra armor just across the board. And, you know, Rally right now is very powerful in Overwatch. And really, like, for me, that would have been like the key thing that I would be looking at in regards to like Brigitte changes. They did not go that route. So I don't think the delete Brig movement is going to quiet, despite what changes that they have made to her on the public test realm. But I 100% agree with this correlation. You know, like, I'm trying to think of, like, what other one would come to mind for me. See, like, I am a little bit dated when it comes to the trading card game. So, like, the last time I played, I'm trying to think at what point this was. But when I last played, a lot of decks were built around, like, the Shaman EX card.
Okay.
Which would be, like, a way to card cycle. And I would be running the Night March variations, which is basically, you know, you're just trying to discard as many Pokemon, basically. And then that would increase your Night March damage just like a multiplier, and then you would just basically just delete everything. And, you know, right now in the game, that kind of feels like Brigitte in the sense that, you know, you're just able to shut down so much with someone that might not look the most intimidating to the opposition.
Yeah. Yeah, the best thing with those Night Marches is they're really low health Pokemon too. They're like these little baby Pokemon, and they're just killing things left and right. These big EXs because they get so much power from that Night March.
Yeah, that's really the only drawback to my correlation, just because, like, there are situations when you're playing Brigitte, and even if it's like a 1v2 situation, the chances are you're going to do just fine.
Well, yeah, that whole delete Brig video I made, which it wasn't a delete Brig necessarily. I was just trying to cash off of the whole movement thing. But it was a video based around me just bullying people at the spawn, where I just trapped them and spawn. And I could do it to 3 or 4 people at a time. It was fun for me, but I'm sure they were really mad about it.
Yeah, there's that feeling of helplessness when it comes to crowd control in the game.
Yeah.
But moving on to the second one, let's go to the tank side of things. So I'll start with D.Va. So D.Va is an interesting case because in Overwatch, she is essentially 2 heroes in one. You know, you have her mecha, and you also have her pilot variation, or baby D.Va, depending on how you want to talk about it. And she's an interesting case primarily because, like, any sort of tweak for her in particular, just because she is essentially two heroes, could be very drastic and change the landscape of a lot of things. Because like when they've tweaked her in the past, like one offset kind of affects so much of the game. And she has what is essentially this great soaking ability in Defense Matrix. Now, there are certain Pokemon abilities that you could definitely kind of correlate that to. So for Diva, who would her Pokemon equivalent be?
It's interesting you brought that up because I have my list of characters and I was trying to fill them all in as quick as I could, but Diva's one I didn't think of. But when you started talking about her, I got a lot of ideas. So one of them back in, I want to say it was 2015, 2014, when they introduced Mega Evolutions, they introduced Mega Kangaskhan, who you can think of as a mech, as the main Kangaskhan, and Baby Diva being the baby Kangaskhan. Where it was super overpowered when it first came out because its ability would allow it to hit twice. The first hit would do full damage, second hit would do half, and it ran the meta, kind of like how Diva does, where she's so good at everything, she's essentially on every kind of comp. But they changed one thing: the second hit of Mega Kangaskhan doing 20 to 50% of the original. You'd never see it. So that's that same way, whereas the vid changed too much with Diva, unfortunately, but she's so good where she's all over the place. But another way you can look at it is Matrix, that there's an attack called Follow Me that takes all the damage away from who's ever it goes to the Pokemon that used it. So there's not necessarily a Pokemon that goes with that specifically. There's a lot of Pokemon that can learn that move, but Follow Me makes me think of Diva now that you explain the Defense Matrix in that way, thinking about it.
Yeah, really, another thing, I would immediately think of is, anything that has, a barrier type ability.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we're going purely based off of her baby persona, I would probably think, Togepi. Something that you would assume just doesn't do any damage, but can actually pack a punch with, metronome, something like that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, when Diva is out of her mech, really don't expect the amount of damage her pistol does, and get a little bit too greedy trying to finalize the kill. And a lot of times that can bite them in the butt.
And I see a lot of people too, just leave Baby Diva alone. It's fine. Let her stay. But whenever I'm Baby Diva, I go hide behind a box or something and start shooting one of the tanks because you build up your ult rack. And if you see a squish, pop them in the head a few times. So, I love that mindset of leave the Baby Diva alone because she can do a lot if you leave her alone.
All right. I'm trying to think of who else would be a good one. See, because I feel like if we did Mercy, that too would kind of lead too much into a Pokemon that would define the meta for quite a substantial amount of time, and I don't want to necessarily have something that would kind of fit into the same category too much. I'm trying to think here. Let's do Moira. So Moira is an interesting case in Overwatch where, one hand gives and the other hand takes. So she's able to not only, heal her party, but she's also able to siphon health, essentially, from the opposition. So it's kind of, I'm trying to think of what would be an ability kind of similar. Obviously the first thing that would come to mind is really anything that has leech life. That would be the obvious thing. But she's been someone that is maybe a little bit trickier to kind of pin down, just because she has her shift ability, her fade ability to kind of fade. Well, obviously it's fade, so you're essentially faded away from it, but it's this little burst of energy where you're able to create some separation. So there's a couple of different ways that you can kind of look at it in correlation to a Pokemon ability. So for Moira, who's the Pokemon that comes to mind for her?
Again, another one I didn't have one for, but as soon as you started explaining it, the things pop into my head. So at first I thought of like Vileplume because of that whole leech seed kind of thing, taking life away and restoring your own. But and I don't know why I thought of this one because this one doesn't work as well as like Vileplume or something like that. But one of the newer ones, Tapu Bulu, he's a legendary deity, and what his ability does is he spreads a what's called a grassy terrain on the field, which heals everybody. So you kind of heal your opponent at the same time, so that doesn't work as well. But at the same time, that terrain boosts all of his attacks, so he just kills things. So it doesn't work as well as like that Vileplume I was talking about, or like the Leech Life you were talking about. But I don't know why that one popped in my head. Yeah, Moira is a weird one to kind of stick to things.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's move on a bit. We'll still work in Pokemon here, and then we'll primarily focus on Overwatch for the remainder of this. So the first lead, which I do not have in the notes. So earlier you talked about the card rotation of Pokemon, specifically with the trading card game. Right now, the meta in Overwatch, especially in competitive, is very defined. And there's been quite a bit of discussion in regards to the community about ways that they can try to work around that, where it's not necessarily going to be a set meta for a long period of time. And what Pokemon does is they have like a card cycle where every year, I think it is, on the competitive side, they basically cut I'm trying to remember how many decks it is. It's like 3 or 4 sets essentially, kind of out of that rotation. So you're not able to play cards from that set, in pro play, which for Overwatch would be probably the equivalent of, say, a ban type system, where you wouldn't be able to select that hero and play that hero in competitive, whether it is on ladder or in a tournament type format. Do you think that could be something that could be on the horizon to try to shake things up, not only in the meta, but also just calm the nerves of people who feel like maybe they're a little bit, maybe the meta necessarily isn't in their wheelhouse, or they're in this position where they feel like they're forced to play a certain role that they wouldn't normally be covering?
I think it could work as, at least starting off, as its own separate thing outside of the competitive ranked system, I put in air quotes, that they have set up right now, just because it is so drastic from what they are doing currently. I don't think that's something they want to just shove on people. I know, I believe it's Jane is doing his own version of it outside, excuse me, to see if it works. So who knows? Maybe that's something they will put in at some point. But yeah, especially with the card game, they ban all those things, but eventually they leak them back in different forms throughout the season. Because unlike Overwatch, you're adding things throughout the season, one hero every once in a while during the seasons. But for the card game, you're getting set over the season, which changes decks drastically and everything else. Yeah, I don't know how exactly it'll work if with a ban system. I know other games do. They also have a lot more, so some will have to look forward. They do end up putting that in any sort of way.
Yeah, you mentioned Jane kind of doing that in his stream lately, and one of the key heroes that has been banned quite often has been Diva, which, surprise, surprise, someone that's been in a various multitude of metas, basically since Overwatch's inception, was the first one banned, and it really just changes the entire landscape of the game just because of how potent her toolkit is, and how you basically have to revolve an entire new sort of team comp just because of the lack of having a diva. But moving on, let's talk a little bit about let's just talk about Overwatch and the whole console versus PC perspective, because you do play on both. So something that I have noticed whenever I do play on PS4, because I do primarily play on PC, I feel like when I'm playing on PS4, the game to me feels like it runs slower. Like, it doesn't feel as arcade as it does on PC. So I feel like I'm running at, like, maybe 80% speed.
Yeah.
It's a different flow. But, you know, there are certain things that just feel a lot harder or a lot easier on, you know, the console side of Overwatch. But how does the game feel to you from that console perspective?
Yeah, like you were saying, it does feel a lot slower moving. And especially because there's a lot less of the shooting characters in that game because it is so much harder to aim than it is on the PC. So the PC, you just move your mouse where you want to shoot and you shoot. But with the controller, you have to move the stick. Hopefully it lines up. Otherwise, you have to go back, move back and forth, and hopefully you get a shot off that at least hits the body. So there's a lot less widows. If you see a widow, either they're really good or really, really bad. It so much more so than it is on the PC. So it's a lot easier to do things as non-shooting characters. So like a lot of the times with placements, I one trick only in placements. I'll play other things when it's not placement time. But like I've done Hanzo and Doomfist so far, and Doomfist is so much easier to use in that game because nobody's shooting you, so you're just flying around killing everything. And if you're on top of someone who can shoot, they usually can't shoot you because it's so much harder to aim. So I feel that it really does affect the game. And for a long time, Pharah was a big problem in there because she could just fly around, nobody could shoot her, and she had the splash damage. But now with her recent nerf, where you have to actually hit the rockets, you see a lot less Pharah because you have to actually aim again, and you're also trying to fly around and control your fuel packs. So it's a lot harder to use her. And I get a lot more Brigida kills on Pharah in PC or on console, sorry, because they're on the ground so much longer because they can't control their fuel and shoot at the same time. So
Yeah, I remember the last time I was playing PS4, I know Symmetra, like, anything with a turret, basically, was really hard to deal with, also because of the aiming aspect of using a controller, and, like, it just felt like the meta, because of this, was also drastically different on PS4, just due to that as well. And something else I noticed, too, like, one, like, I know part of this is definitely the fact that I usually don't use a controller. So, like, the overall feeling of a controller throws me off to begin with, which just factors directly into how I'm doing in regards to aim. But you also have to kind of, like, factor in aim assist using a controller, too, because there's times where I feel like, you know, it might, like, over-calculate where it thinks I need to be, and then I just completely end up missing to the point where there are times where I feel like I should just turn it off entirely because it's doing more harm than good for me.
yeah, I forgot to bring that up. I was gonna bring that up. The aim assist is so annoying in that game because I like to flick shoot, so I'm trying to do that and then just trying to aim assist at the same time. And I've looked in to turn it off, and it's not easy to find. I don't know where it is, so I'm just dealing with it. It's like I was playing Widow on there the other day. I was actually killing people, but there was a lot of times I missed shots because the aim assist would move me. I'm like, nope, I knew they were going to be there, so I was going to shoot there, but you moved me to where they used to be. So thanks for that. But yeah, aim assist is it's not fun.
I'm trying to think of what else. So it's been a while since I played it on PS4. But the last time I remember, okay, let's talk like post the Symmetra rework. The last time I saw, there was no way to keybind the. Oh, I'm trying to remember what they called it in the game.
Is it interact? Are you thinking?
Yeah, the interact button. Is that still the case? Because if that's the case, then like, there's really no way to actually use her teleporter on PS4.
So as far as I remember, it has one, but I haven't looked far enough into it because I don't get paired up with Symmetras enough to actually think about it. But then when I do, it's bound to the same thing as I think the melee. So, which is the right joystick pushed in.
Okay.
So, like, I'll be in the middle of a fight. I was playing as Arisa, I remember, and I was trying to kill something that was right up on me. So I went to punch, and I was also standing on top of the teleporter at the same time. So it shot me across the map, and I was away from my team. I'm like, I don't know where I am or what just happened, but I think I teleported and I had to run all the way back. So yeah, it has one. I just haven't gone into going to change it. And that was another thing too. Either the controller on the PC and the PS4 are different buttons, or it's been so long since I played between the two of them that I had to reset each character individually because they all feel so weird on the controller, what their abilities are and what they're bound to. So
Yeah, I remember when I played, I was like, okay, like I'm first going to start out by like playing who I play on PC and seeing how that translates on a controller. And what I found is, at the time, this was like before Brigitte came out, the two heroes that I felt the best with were both support players. Lucio and Mercy, to me, felt the easiest to just pick up and play using a controller. But like when I went to like try Pharah, because I play a ton of Pharah on PC. She's really my DPS main. Because I come from playing a lot of tribes, so I'm used to rocket launchers. You know, I play a lot of Quake too, so it's just a natural fit for me. But trying to maneuver in the air while also trying to aim, and the whole balance between the joysticks just felt so unnatural to me as a player that I couldn't do it. But like if I went to someone like, you know, Junkrat or Soldier 76, like it wasn't bad. But, you know, there were a lot of cases where I was like, okay, let me just try someone that really doesn't require me to aim. So I'm like, okay, I'll try Reinhardt. And that was fine. Like, tanking on PS4 feels pretty good. Like, you feel like you're having maybe more of an impact than you do on PC, which I thought was very interesting. So it's just, there's like this huge different contrast between both sides of it, and it makes the experience like very unique in that sense, just because what you do on PC doesn't necessarily mean that's going to translate the same way when you are playing on PS4 or Xbox.
Yeah, and like a lot of, I mentioned I just got in a DPS account on PC. A lot of the people I'm playing with are coming over from Xbox and PS4, and they're at the same point where I was when I started. I don't know how to move. I don't know where all these things are. Like it gets a lot easier, and it's a lot better once you do learn it. But you were talking about Pharah, and the one thing I do remember when I first started playing Pharah with controller is that the fuel part of the jetpack is bound to two different buttons. So either you can use X, which is your jump button, and you can hold that down, but then you can't control the joystick to aim, so you have to like flip between the two. And I didn't know for the longest time that the L2 button also does fuel. So you can actually use your aiming joystick. So I was like trying to flip back and forth between using my fuel and aiming, and it was impossible for the longest time until I figured out, oh, there's another button I can be using.
Yeah, I like that makes sense, because like I'm pretty sure it's R1 and R2 that would either be your concussive blast or, you know, just her main fire with her rockets. So you know, we've touched on, you know, some different key differences between PC and console. You know, maybe some of the things that are going to be a bit more harder to deal with just due to how different aiming is between the two. And you know, we already touched on snipers, because that was another thing that was very evident when you do play on PS4. You know, I can count on one hand the amount of times I saw a good sniper on PS4.
Yep.
It's hit scan is a lot easier with a keyboard and mouse. And I mean, it's night and day difference on that front. So whenever like I play on PS4 and I see a Widowmaker, I was like, you know, I don't feel like I am going to feel forced to like try to pressure them or dive them if I'm playing like a
diva. The open, I'll be fine.
Right? Like I'm like I got nothing to worry about. Worst case, you know, I take a body shot and then I'll just, you know, we'll get healed through it and we'll be good to go. But you know, I mentioned earlier, like the big thing for me is when I do play on PS4, I want a level to try competitive. Now that being said, you know, when I do play on PS4, it is very evident that despite everyone getting a microphone when they buy the console, no one really uses it.
Yep.
And I don't know if that also factors into competitive on PS4. So in your experience, what would you say is the overall percentage of really any game, regardless of how many people, that someone is actually communicating via their microphone?
So personally, for my PS4, I don't have a microphone because I only have the one, and it's for my PC. Um, so when I started playing Quick Play, I actually had the opposite thing where everybody was on the mic, and I was trying to stream it, and they weren't talking and making shot calls. They were just screaming the entire time, and just making the stupidest noises. So I'd mute them each round and be like, "Okay, we're fine now." And it just kept happening every single game. So eventually, I just turned off all my comms because it's like this is annoying to deal with at the beginning of every stream. So I did that, and then once I got to comp, I'm like, okay, there's going to be sensible people in comp. Let's turn those on now. And I get there, nobody uses their mic, not a single person. I'm like, well, at least I have it on if somebody does. But as for all the games I play on comp, I've never had somebody even say hello on the mic or anything. So
That is very alarming to me because I was feeling very hopeful, like, hey, maybe because we're gonna be in competitive, that things would be different, and you were telling me otherwise. That worries me.
not at all. At least not in my experience. Maybe yours will be different, but as far as I've been, not a single peep out of anybody.
That is very peculiar. See, that almost makes me feel like now I have to main tank, so at least I'd be able to use my microphone and communicate. That doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to listen or they'll actually follow, any sort of callouts or anything. But with the main tank role, I definitely feel like you have to be more vocal as opposed to some other positions and certain heroes within the game itself. But with that being said, since you do placements on both PC and PS4, is there any difference in your placements in regards to where you finish? Because, for me, like, it's still, like, a big unknown because I'm not level 25 on PS4 yet. Like, are you ranked in the same tier in both game formats?
I am not. And necessarily that's because of the game format. It could be because I feel like I do a lot muscle and because of my history with mouse with the control. It's more of that as soon as I got on my PC version, I went straight into comp and I didn't know enough to be going into comp. So I quickly dropped to bronze, and I don't play enough comp to actually get out of bronze. I get high, and then it's like, well, I'm not going to play comp anymore. I'm playing quick play because I want to screw around. And I'm slowly getting out of there. But I've got my golden mace for Briggs, so I don't really care about anymore. But on my console, I'm at 2100, so I'm in gold there. And I've only done 2 placements. So I played all of Hanzo the first season and got gold. Then did all Doomfist, and I'm at this gold level now. So again, I don't know if that's because of the different versions or it's just because I don't put enough time into comp on my PC version to get up to gold or maybe even higher. Because I feel like I do better on PC. I have a better sense of what's going on. I don't know.
Well, it too could be a factor of just the fact that everyone is more comfortable with PC gaming.
Mm-hmm.
so the overall skill cap and just
too,
could play into that as well. So, like, technically we already kind of touched up on this a little bit, but what hero differentials are you seeing now? I know you mentioned, like, you really don't see as many snipers, but are there any other options that you feel like are very prominent or absent when it comes to either side of the coin, whether it is on PS4 or on PC?
Thinking of it now, I think Doomfist is another one you don't see a lot of, and I think that's mostly because of how the controller is set up to play Doomfist. It's so hard to do it on the actual setup they have. I changed mine around completely, and now I'm really good with him on there. So I think that's part of it, and also the tracking in the air. You have to figure out where you're knocking them in the air and chase them down, that kind of stuff. So again, it comes with the aim. But yeah, it's a lot more heavy-based ground movement on the PS4. But even then, and I don't know if this is just because I'm a lower level again, still there. I'm like level 34 maybe. I never see main tanks, and I'm used to having a main tank because So I'm like, why don't I see Arisas? Why don't I see Reinhardts? It may be because I'm not playing them, so they're not there. But I'm starting to see him a little bit more now, so I think it might have just been my level at that point. Reinhardt's more so than Reese's because again, the aiming aspect of it. Yeah, it's not too much different, just a lot less of the aiming is what this is.
Okay, well, with that being said, obviously, like, the state of the game has been a pretty big topic of discussion here, lately, both, in the podcast scene or just, across all of, the forums, the subreddits, all of that good stuff, from a number of different perspectives. Some of it does kind of, like, revolve around the current meta and how, it's been triple tank, triple support, in virtually, any game, really. It doesn't matter what skill tier, which I absolutely do not agree with in the sense that it's affecting every player. I feel like that's more on maybe, like, we'll say, like, platinum and above. It's still pretty prominent, but it's definitely goats v goats pretty much every game at, like, the grandmaster level, for the most part. But lately, what they have been keeping an eye on, or at least keeping tabs on, and Brigitte is part of this, is they are trying to essentially tone down the effectiveness of crowd control abilities or things that make you basically, like, lose air control of your character. And, we just had Ash introduce into, well, let me rephrase that. We just had Bob introduce, the real hero release, when Ash came out. And, Ash's toolkit doesn't have any sort of crowd control ability. I mean, she has, like, a knockback, but that's not, like, a hard CC. So she's more ability-based, not necessarily, like, tied down to being, like, a stun lock hero or someone that makes you lose control. Where do you sit on the side of the fence when it comes to the amount of crowd control in the game right now? Because there are a lot of people who feel like in this current meta, there are too many ways to basically just lose control of your hero, whether it is with a McCree flashbang, the Brigitte, shield bash, which stuns you, or, like, the Sombra hack, things like that. There are a lot of things that just kind of make you lose control of your actual character.
Yeah, so I sit on the side of the fence of it doesn't bother me as much, even though I do play main tank, and, like, if Brigitte's walking at me and I'm Reinhardt, I'm like, well, I'm getting stunned right now, so this is something I have to deal with. And hopefully I can mitigate that as much as I can. So my team also backs up, and they're not in the line of fire when I do get. Sometimes it's not avoidable, but the one that bothers me the most, and I touched on this, is May. Sitting there frozen while she walks up to you and just. It's the most annoying thing in the world. Just like, well, but thanks for just straight up killing me. Because Brigitte, hopefully you can get away from and but usually I'm also Brigitteing her anyway. See, I don't like is there, and she is something else with. She does have the not as drag often because it's her ultimate, and she has the pushback, which kind of helps her out a little bit. But yeah, I don't like. There is a lot of it, and Sombra's hacking is only really annoying if you have somebody that really relies on their abilities, like Wrecking Ball. You hate to go up against a Sombra if you're a Wrecking Ball, because then you're just a hamster walking around where you want to be swinging around, that kind of stuff. So I don't necessarily know where I sit with crowd control. It's for me, but I understand why upset about it, because they're just trying to play their game and they're getting stopped. And I've seen the videos of, like, we're running control in the game, and yeah, I understand it, but I don't know.
Gotcha. Well, we are running a little bit long, so let's go ahead and wrap things up. So if someone is looking to, find you on social media or on your YouTube channel, which is where a majority of your content is at, where can our listeners and people wanting to learn more about not only Pokemon, but Overwatch, find you at right now?
Well, on YouTube, Twitch, and I just started Instagram today. It's Sharp Dressed Gaming, all one word. So Sharp Dressed, variations are the 3 words you need to look up. Those 3 words in a row. And then my Twitter is a shortened, condensed version of that. So it's Sharp Dress Game. There's no ED on the dress, and there's no ING on the game. So that's just character limitations there. So yeah, those are the main places.
Man, darn those character limitations. I'm so glad. Quick side note: I'm so glad that they expanded like the Twitter characters back when they did that. It just makes me feel so much better because, like, if I'm podcasting, I'm like, okay, these are all of the topics I'm going to be talking about tonight. And then before, it's just like, well, I guess we're just going live to talk about, Overwatch and Overwatch esports, and then no one really knows like the fine details of the matter. But with that being said, Sharp Dress Gaming, thank you so much for being with me here tonight for Overwatch Recall. I greatly appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to sit down and talk a little bit more about what you do, on your YouTube and just, for the overall landscape, not just for Pokemon, but, the main focus of this podcast, that being none other than Overwatch.
Well, of course. Thank you for having me. I'm always glad to sit down and talk with people about these kind of things.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Overwatch Recall with Glen, Totemlydrunk, Smiddy. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit OWLNshow.com and on Twitter @OWRecall. We'll catch you next time.